we are so glad you're here with us. I just wanted to give our families a little bit of direction. If you needed any extra space this morning while you're here with us, you can go out the back doors, and we have a family room down our main children's ministry hallway waiting for you with cozy couches. I'm sorry, but that sounds amazing. I mean, just come to church in your jammies and come sit on our couch or something. I don't know. And then also, we had a bit of a bottleneck. For those of you who weren't here last week, we opened a kids' price store, and it's been really fun to see the kids get into it. They get to earn points through their Sunday challenges and memorizing scripture, all the good stuff. But instead of going out the main door at the end of service, we're going to filter out the back door. Do you see those pretty balloons?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. And there's colorful footprints on the floor. If you're not sure where you're supposed to go, just follow the footprints. We'll meet you out in the lobby to give you your prize bake envelopes and to give you your points for the morning. And then you can head to the prize store. Well, happy anniversary.
What?
Do you still have your mic on?
I guess so.
I don't like that. He could do some things with that. Happy anniversary. Yes, this week is the 1 year anniversary of the global pandemic. 1 year ago, we had the stay-at-home order from Governor Brown. Hey, Papa John. My father-in-law's here. I just spotted him. Oh, so good to see you. Thanks for being here. We had that crazy stay-at-home order. 1 year ago, we all got in our cars after service and had no idea that we wouldn't come back and have in-person services for more than 7 months. 7 months. Little did we know. I have to kind of laugh to myself, especially as we're kind of, starting to put out the information about Easter, when we said, hey guys, it's okay, we'll be back on Easter Sunday. It'll be the best Easter ever. And then we didn't come back. Instead, we have been on shifting sand. Shifting sand, government regulations, changing every day, restrictions, relentless waves of public opinion. These are crazy times. For a full year, you and I have been ravaged by change, by disruption. We have dealt with unprecedented constraints in how we live. Now, look at me. What is happening to me? I'm wearing this crazy face mask. I feel like a mad scientist. We've absorbed a drought of affection and connection because of isolation and social distancing. It's been hard. Our kids, they went home for spring break, and then they never went back to school. Summer brought news of racial tensions and riots across the country. In August and September, we were disrupted by forest fires. We lived in absolute darkness for a week, with ash raining down. We have families in our very church who lost homes. Our families have been disrupted. Right? Parents are now working full-time while trying to homeschool their children. Kids are experiencing loneliness and isolation. Some kids are alone at home while they're trying to get their school done, floundering in their education, or worse, they are suffering abuse and neglect. Teachers are teaching to blank screens. We all watched as George Floyd took his last breath. I'll never forget it. We watched as our nation's capital was stormed by an angry mob. Most of the regularity that you and I take for granted has been swept away. And while we absolutely do lean on the hope and assurance that we have in Jesus Christ, we are not exempted from the heartache, from the sorrow, from the anger and the confusion that accompanies a hostile environment. And just as it is scriptural to embrace hope and healing, it is very much scriptural that we would weep, that we would mourn for the pain of loss, that we would weep in our discouragement. And this brings me to our most recent interruption. Elsa came for a visit. I have never seen a Disney cartoon come to life before, but it did. It happened, didn't it? President's Weekend. What is it about President's Weekend? Crazy things happen. I went to bed that night fully knowing what the forecast was going to be. And I barely slept. I tossed and turned because our house is surrounded by beautiful fauna. Lots of trees. We live in an older neighborhood, so everything is towering and tall and beautiful until the ice comes. And then it's scary. Man, I got to tell you, I walked out of my house that morning and I just looked at the panorama of ice. I was transfixed. It was extraordinary. It was beautiful and yet terrifying. I remember standing in my driveway, and one of the tallest trees in our neighborhood, I heard a crack, and a branch went plummeting to the ground. And I just stood there. It towers slightly over our home, just wondering if it was going to crash into our house. Thankfully, it didn't. I have a few pictures up on the screen of some of the, yeah. Thank you, Isaac, for putting Elsa in there. She's got... I didn't know this was going to happen. Oh, but these are trees in our yard that just fell. We lost several trees. And, look at that ice. Isn't that something? She's doing her thing, guys. It's funny, but at the same time, I will not forget what I felt that morning. What are you doing to me?
She snuck off.
Well, she's stepping on my point a little bit. Elsa was very powerful that weekend. And you know what it made me feel? It made me feel powerless. I was met that morning with a resounding sense of my own personal powerlessness. So you know what I did? I went back in my house, and I put on my rubber gloves, and I got down on my hands and knees, and I cleaned my kitchen floor. Because that's what I do when things seem overwhelming. I clean. I try to get some kind of control. And for me, that meant, well, I can't do anything about the ice out there. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to make my floor clean. I can control that. I was overwhelmed, not by the ice, but by yet another huge upending event. It seems I can no longer take them one at a time. They're just blurring into this year-long crazy event, a hostile environment that has disrupted our lives. And I'm just trying to carve out some kind of regular life. And for a year, we have been living in this hostile environment. I love this word, we. Never before have we experienced we like we have this last year. This little 2-letter pronoun means a lot to us now because we have been bound together by an unprecedented amount of shared experience. We're all in the same boat. We're all living with less assurance about what is to come. We're all living in the midst of chaos. We're all wrestling with COVID. We're all rebuilding or recovering something. We're all living with the chatter of conspiracy theories that threaten to dislodge us from reality. And I can kind of see, I can see the appeal. It might be more desirable to buy into something crazy out there than to actually deal with the reality of fires and ice and a global pandemic. And I thank God for his word that reminds us that in the midst of a raging storm, God is the author of peace and calm. I'm thankful for his word that brings truth to bear on unbearable situations. And here's the truth. This is Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. This morning, we are going to be reminded that we have a very real enemy. Thank you, Isaac. That was amazing. That fire, we have an enemy who wages war against us. And it's not an ice storm. It's not a raging forest fire. It's not a worldwide pandemic. It's not Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Hello. Our enemy is unseen, and he desires to destroy our fervor for God and his kingdom. He desires to rob us of our identity and our purpose as Christ followers. And we face him now just as Nehemiah faced him thousands of years ago. Nehemiah's memoir is going to show us how to face the enemy in the midst of an incessant onslaught. So let's bow our heads. Father, you are a holy and good God, and we come into your presence and we don't take it lightly. Lord, I thank you for who you are. I thank you that there is power in the name of Jesus, and that by your Holy Spirit, we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be distracted. We don't have to self-protect and remove ourselves. We can lean into you. We can lean into your word, and we can allow the truth to have bearing on our lives today. In Jesus' name, Lord, show us, Lord, show us. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear clearly what you are saying, even though we can't see our enemy, Lord, what he is trying to do. And we thank you in advance in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, if you want to open up your Bibles to Nehemiah chapter 6, that's where we're going to be this morning. This is week 8 of our series in Nehemiah, so I thought it might be good to start with a little summary of what we've covered so far. Nehemiah was a man who was called by God to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, which was the wonderful city of David, the capital city of Israel, which is God's holy chosen people. Nehemiah was a man of courage. He was a man of prayer. He stood strong in his purpose in front of a powerful king, King Artaxerxes. And Nehemiah had some enemies, didn't he? They had names like Sanballat, Tobias, Geshem. He was able to withstand tremendous opposition that they brought against him. And then last week we learned about how Nehemiah confronted his own people regarding the oppression that was being afflicted among the poor. And that community changed for the better because of his courageous confrontation. Make no mistake, Nehemiah was breaking through spiritual strongholds. Even then, there was a spiritual battlefield. There was an unseen enemy who did not want the people of God to fulfill their purpose, just like us. An enemy who did not want the people of Israel to be holy as God is holy, to be peculiar among the nations, to be a signpost to the goodness of God. Do you see the relationship between us and the Israelites? They had an enemy who did not want the nation of Israel to do what they were chosen to do from the time of Abraham, which was this, to usher in the Messiah, the one who would redeem and restore a broken and sinful world. This week's message is entitled, "And the Hits Keep on Coming." Nehemiah chapter 6 is all about the hits that keep on coming against Nehemiah, threatening to break him away from his God-given purpose and identity. And he will not catch a break. He will not catch a break from the onslaught of the enemy. Anyone in here feeling like you need a little bit of a break from the onslaught of 2020 and 2021? As Nehemiah continues his work of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, he will do so every step of the way with fiery darts from the enemy raining down upon him. All right, fiery dart number 1, distraction. Everyone say distraction. Nehemiah 6, 1 through 2. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gates. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. Oh, no. Okay. I didn't even think of that till just now. Okay, so we have established that Sanballat, we'll call him Sanballat and Company, are Nehemiah's enemies, and they had one goal, to prevent the completion of the wall. And their strategy right here is to distract Nehemiah from his God-ordained purpose and calling, to isolate him away from the project, which was just on the precipice of being completed. And though we don't know definitively, Nehemiah's response hints that there was a possible coup, that maybe they were going to do him bodily harm. Nehemiah 6, tells us Nehemiah's response, which was discernment. Everyone say discernment. But I realized they were plotting to harm me, so I replied by sending this message to them. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? He's undaunted. Nehemiah was able to see right through their plan. He exercised discernment. Discernment is a powerful tool that you and I can use to sniff out the plans of the enemy. And make no mistake, as we have endured these hardships this last year, the enemy desires strongly that you and I be distracted and pulled away from God's purpose. Anyone in here have a cell phone? That's kind of a rhetorical question. Do you ever get it out to do something and then you see that little red circle with the number in the middle with your notifications? And then all of a sudden, you're texting or you're checking an email or you're looking at your reminders and suddenly you don't even remember what you got on your phone to do. Does that happen to you? Happens to me all the time. Drives me crazy. It's a pain. Listen, the enemy wants to attack or to distract us. Only he doesn't just want to, sorry, I have an itch. He doesn't want to distract us with notifications, which are a pain, but, we can deal with them. He wants to distract us with other things, powerful tools, like infighting, conspiracy theories, as I mentioned before, polarization. He wants to ensnare us in the trap of nationalism. We've been talking a lot about this. If you haven't heard some of Isaac's earlier messages in Nehemiah, you need to listen to this trap. Go back, listen to those messages. He wants to distract us with consumerism, with debt, with division. He wants us to focus on our rights. I have been astonished as I look at Facebook and I see Christ followers so upset that their rights have been taken away. Jesus said that to gain our lives, we must lose our lives. Jesus is not about our rights. That is an American ideology. It's not a Jesus ideology. The enemy wants to distract us with unending escapism and entertainment. But we are the church, you and I. We are called to be salt and light in a broken and hurting world. Matthew 5:13-16, Jesus says this, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." That is God's purpose for us. We are the light of the world, and we need to be like Nehemiah and discern the plans of the enemy because he wants to put that light out. And he wants to extract every bit of saltiness from us so that we would be repugnant to the world instead of a sweet, sweet smell. We need to, as the writer of Hebrews so aptly tells us, to fix our eyes on Jesus. Jesus, who is the author and the perfecter of our faith. Jesus, who for the joy set before him endured the shame and the disgrace of the cross. Easter's coming. Easter is coming, and we get to celebrate a risen Savior. We are not powerless. In the midst of unprecedented disruption and hardship, we, the church, have an unprecedented opportunity to be salt and light if we don't lose our saltiness, if we don't allow ourselves to be distracted. And as the hits keep on coming, Nehemiah remains focused. Verse 4 says this, 4 times they sent the same message, and each time I gave them the same reply. I get into a little bit of trouble because I can be stubborn. Can I point out Nehemiah was stubborn in a good way? And he knew that he was called for a purpose, and he remained stubbornly united with what God called him to do. He discerned the malicious intentions of his enemy, and his assurance rendered the attack of the enemy to be utterly powerless in his life. Not once, but over and over and over and over again, leaving him free to do the work of God that he had been called to do. We have work to do. We must be able to discern the distractions of the enemy so we can fulfill our purpose, which is to point the world to the way of Jesus. Fiery dart number 2, personal attack. The enemies of Nehemiah were relentless, as we have already seen, and Sanballat's next attack is going to pack a punch. Nehemiah 6, 5-7. The 5th time, Sanballat's servant came with an open letter in his hand, and this is what it said. There is a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem tells me that it is true, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and that is why you are building the wall. According to his reports, you plan to be their king. Also, he reports that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you, look, there is a king in Judah. You can be very sure that this report will get back to the king, so I suggest that you come and meet with me. Lies, accusations, threats. When the enemy's covert attacks fail, he brings in the heavy artillery. Sanballat cannot distract Nehemiah, so he levels an offensive personal attack. He fabricates a letter. He generates false testimony. He threatens to paint Nehemiah as a conspirator to the most powerful king in the world. He calls Nehemiah's personal motivations into question. And he attempts to rewrite the narrative of Nehemiah's life. What's he doing? He's gaslighting Nehemiah. Nehemiah's response, truth and determination. Nehemiah 6, 8-9. I replied, there is no truth in any part of your story. You're making up the whole thing. They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with even greater determination. Nehemiah's response is startlingly simple. It's almost comical how little credence he gives to Sanballat in this crazy story he's made up. He's like flicking away a fly. He doesn't become defensive. He doesn't try to explain himself. Why? Because he knows what he is about. He just flicks it away. Nehemiah extinguishes the fiery dart of personal attack with truth and determination. I don't think there has ever been a more important time for us, the church, to know what we are about. How can we point to Jesus if we ourselves are derailed when the enemy attacks us with lies? We have to stand strong. I want to tell you about a lie that the enemy has come into my life with. Not a small one. This is a lifelong lie. When I graduated from college, I was 8.5 months pregnant with my first daughter, who graduated last year, Jenna, my precious Jenna. And instead of graduating and building my career, well, I graduated, but instead of going on to build my career, which was something I'd wanted to do for my whole life, I became a stay-at-home mom. I felt called to my child. And let me tell you, when we do what God calls us to do, the enemy comes in. For years, I lived with a lie that I had amounted to nothing. It penetrated my heart, my thoughts, my relationship with God. Bitterness threatened to steal the joy of motherhood from me. Society said I should and that I could have it all. Society said you can have a full-time job and still be a full-time mom. But I had a strong conviction that I needed to be at home with my children. For 10 years, the enemy hounded me with that lie. You have accomplished nothing. You are nothing. And I believed him. I had to come against him with the truth of God's word. Even now, I have to continue to ward off this lie. Do you relate? We all have go-to lies that the enemy uses against us. They're called strongholds. And he wants to parade them as truth in your life. The enemy says, you're all about money. And we say, no, lies. We are about generosity. The enemy says, you are king of your life. And we say, no, lies. Jesus is king. The enemy says, you are how you look. Your clothes, your body, your image, or you are what you do, your job, your status. But we say, no, lies. We are children of God, created in his image and called according to his very good purpose. The enemy says, this year has been too much. You aren't going to make it. We say, lies. No, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. I am more than a conqueror through him who loves me. Yes. Loves me dearly. Loves me so much that he sent his one and only son. The Spirit of Christ, the very Spirit that raised him from the dead, lives in me. We overcome personal attack through truth and determination. Fiery dart number 3, sin and self-protection. Nehemiah 6, 10 through 13. Later, I went to visit Shemaiah, son of Delaiah and grandson of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home. He said, let us meet together inside the temple of God and bolt the doors shut. Your enemies are coming to kill you tonight. But I replied, should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter the temple to save his life? No, I won't do it. I realized that God had not spoken to him, but that he had uttered this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. They were hoping to intimidate me and make me sin. Then they would be able to discredit me. Sanballat and company have given up, so they realize they cannot get to Nehemiah. They hire somebody on the inside. This last week, I sent my message out to the team, and they gave me some feedback, and this is something that Chris Bowlby wrote. It's one thing when we face opposition from those outside our trusted circle. It's a whole other thing when we face it from those who are close to us. How painful this must have been. The hits keep on coming. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable here, and I hope that you will forgive me. I've been in ministry my whole adult life. I'm 40 years old, and my husband and I took our first ministry assignment shortly after Bible college. Never in my life of ministry have I seen trusted people desert and depart their churches like during this pandemic. Within just a few weeks of the stay-at-home order, my husband, Isaac, began receiving emails and phone calls and meetings with people, dearly loved brothers and sisters in Christ, attacking his character, his wisdom, his decision-making, his belief in Jesus, all because they wanted us to open our doors now. Those who confessed their love for him and for our church, out of the same mouth, cursed. And this is what James, in the book of James, says, my friends, this should not be so. And this is happening all over the nation. We have many, 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 many friends who's senior pastor. And this is happening all over the nation. The church, and the thing that is, we're going to survive. It hurts. It sucks. It's discouraging. But the worst thing is that the church is being torn apart and losing its witness. This is profoundly wrong. My friends, this should not be so. Here, Nehemiah is faced with a traitor, a fellow Israelite, who is hired to lead him into sin and into self-protection. And the ultimate goal is to discredit Nehemiah, to prove that when push comes to shove, Nehemiah will abandon his trust in God. And furthermore, they tried to entice Nehemiah to desecrate the holy temple for his own personal protection. Read the book of Leviticus. I don't have time to explain why, but that would have been anathema to the priests, anathema to the Israelites, anathema to God. And in the midst of this onslaught, Nehemiah is not crushed. What is his response? To recognize and resist. Verses 11 through 13 describe a man who is undaunted, who is on guard against the attack of the enemy. What does he say? They were hoping to intimidate me and make me sin. Then they would be able to discredit me. He saw right through it. He resists the temptation towards sin and self-preservation. Sin is a trap. Self-protection is a trap. Let me be clear. I am not talking about the precautions against COVID. I'm talking about the temptation to self-protect that comes after a year of unexpected events. To go into hiding, to retreat into escapism, to withdraw from church, to keep people at arm's length, to desecrate the church by aligning with any ideology other than the way of Jesus. We have to be on guard against the traps of the enemy. 1 Peter 5, 8 through 9 says this, "Be alert and be of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings." We are not alone. We may be in the throes of chaos, but we are all in the same boat together, And we are called to stand firm, to recognize the trap the enemy has placed in our paths. The Bible says, resist the enemy and he will flee. He will flee. Well, I started out the message by reading the verse out of Ephesians 6:12. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." This week in your community groups and in your daily devotions, you're going to have a chance to engage more with this unseen fight that we're in. And here are some discussion points. The first one is this: review the fiery darts that Nehemiah experienced: distraction, personal attack, sin, self-protection. Share some of your own personal experiences with these attacks in your life. If you are not in a community group, go to coffee with someone and talk through these. You can do that now. Isn't that great? We had the restaurants open up, so that's great. Number 2, discuss Nehemiah's responses: discernment, truth and determination, recognition and resistance. Why are these responses important, and how have you seen them play out in your life? Number 3, read Ephesians 6, 10 through 20, which is all about the armor of God and counter-attacking the spiritual forces that are against us. Number 4, take inventory of the armor in your life. Where do you need to shore up? And share that with your group. Number 5, pray. Pray for one another to have discernment, to understand and know God's truth, to recognize and resist the plans of the enemy. Would you stand with me as we come to a close? We're going to sing one more song and we're going to take communion. But I'm going to end by reading Romans 8, 31 through 37. You might just want to close your eyes and allow these words to penetrate your existence as we have spent some time reflecting over this last year. Romans 8, 31 through 37. "If God is for us, who can be against us? Since he did not spare even his own son, but gave him up for us all, won't he also give us everything else? Who dares accuse us, whom God has chosen for his own? No one. For God himself has given us right standing with himself. Who then will condemn us? No one. For Christ Jesus died for us and was raised to life for us, and he is sitting in the place of honor at God's right hand, pleading for us. Can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity or are persecuted or hungry or destitute or in danger or threatened with death? No. Despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ who loved us. As we take communion, let's be reunited with our purpose, to be a signpost to the goodness of God in the world. God is with us. God is for us. In this season where the hits just keep on coming, where the enemy threatens to derail us through attack and distraction and temptation, let's be stubbornly aware of what we are about, to be salt and light to a broken and hurting world.